Well, welcome back, everyone, to A Little Faith. I am pleased today to be joined by a fellow Canadian brother, Brother Russell Dawes. Russell, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Russ, please help the audience introduce yourself, where you're from, how old you are, and which ecclesia you attend.
Okay, my name's Russell Dawes. I live in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I've been here most of my life, not all of it, but most of it, and I attend the what is now called the Toronto East Ecclesia, which is in the borough of East York. It's now the Ecclesia is now called what it was called, I should say, Cobourg for years and years and years. So I still think of it as Cobourg rather than Toronto East, but that's the way it is today, Toronto East. So it's originally a Berean, what we called a Berean meeting before reunion took place in 1953 with Central Fellowship. And since 53, we've just been there. At one point, I guess we were, the Toronto East Ecclesia was the largest ecclesia in North America, probably 130 members at one point. This was probably 35, 40 years ago. Because of COVID, we now meet on Zoom and meet in the ecclesia with 30 or 40 members as well as those who are on Zoom, which is another maybe 20 or so.
Right.
So I'm an old geezer. I'm 90. I'll be 96 in 2 months. I've been in the truth since what we call the truth since 1953. When I met my wife a couple of years before that, I was not brought up a Christadelphian. I had no idea what a Christadelphian was until I met her. And she wasn't baptized then either. So, but she was very strong in her hope and in her faith. She was sort of the stalwart of our spiritual background, I would say. She passed away a year and a half ago, and we were married for 72 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot to dig in here. So you have been a baptized member and part of the Christadelphian community since 1953. You didn't grow up necessarily as a Christadelphian.
No. I had no idea what a Christadelphian was.
Right. Did you have a religious upbringing when you were younger?
No. I would say no,
Okay.
As a general rule. When I was a kid, in my teens, the Second World War was on. Mm-hmm. And I queried how people from one country could go, of one faith, could go to, let's say, in those days it was Germany, and kill each other. And I couldn't understand that. I couldn't understand what happened when you died. I had no idea what to believe. I used to wonder about God myself. And it wasn't until I met my wife that I came in contact with Christadelphians, and that would be in late 1950. Yeah.
So what would you say was it about the Christadelphians that kind of drew you in? I mean, obviously you have the connection to your wife, but, thinking about your background and this sort of pondering and wondering what is out there, what drew you in to this community that you now became such a strong faith for your entire life?
Yeah, well, spiritually, it was the first lecture, what they called a lecture in those days that I heard was on, could have been the immortality of the soul, but it answered 2 or 3 questions that I was sort of searching for in the back of my mind, and it was of interest to me because before I really got involved with Christadelphians, my wife's mother, who was not a Christadelphian until she was maybe 25 or 30, I was living outside of Toronto. I took an engineering course in Peterborough, Ontario, and I was reading. She said, "Well, if you're going to read Elpis Israel," which I was reading at the time, which was sort of heavy duty, she said, you'll have to read it with your Bible beside you to check the verses, and you'll have to use a dictionary. You'll need a dictionary, which I did. So I was living on my own, like 100 miles from Toronto. So I was reading Elpis Israel. I got through it over a period of about a year and a bit, and it was, totally informative for me from a biblical standpoint, which was very, very helpful. And I did check it with my dictionary and with my Bible assiduously, and it just revealed sort of what we call the truth from a scriptural standpoint for me, and answered all kinds of questions for me in my life. And of course, then I started attending what they called eureka classes, and not eureka classes, but Bible classes before Sunday school when I came to Toronto every weekend. And so I became, acquainted with the truth from a greenhorn spiritual standpoint to what I would term over maybe the next 5 or 10 years as a strong spiritual background and belief.
So you've now spent 73 years or so in this community. Looking back at your life now, you've gone through many different stages of being, married, and then kids and grandchildren. What have been some of the most important experiences or seasons of your life that has really transformed your faith?
I guess the highlight, in a way, not necessarily the only highlight, because I would say I went through what I would say eureka sessions, which means I have found, and the biggest thing for me, first of all, was coming into contact with my wife Muriel, who was very, very strong in faith and hope. I would say an outstanding understanding of the Bible because of her upbringing from a young girl, and she just had a knowledge of the Old Testament in particular, which I did not have, and she was very strong in her understanding, firm in her beliefs, and so that would be the main turning point. Beyond that, we started at a very early age in 1960. We lived outside of Toronto for 6 or 7 years, then moved back to Toronto. By then we'd had a set of twins and another boy, and we moved back to Toronto, and we went to Bible schools. And if there was ever a eureka moment in my life, it was Bible schools in North America. We attended Bible schools in Germany and England, and not many in England, but elsewhere. And that was a big contribution to my personal spirituality and our family's spirituality, which you may want to talk about later. But Bible schools played probably the most important part in our lives, because we went every year from 1960 until, a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. We would go to Bible schools in the eastern United States, in the middle of the United States. We started the Niagara Falls Christadelphian Bible School here in southern Ontario in 1984, and we ran that for about 20 to 25 years on the committee, and initially started that. So Bible schools and the association with brethren and sisters that I personally had over the years was another big eureka moment. I had the fortunate job experience of going into what they called international sales with my company, which was General Electric, and I was able to have traveled Uh, well, I did a survey for the family about a month ago. I think I've been to maybe 37 or 38 different countries. And in almost, well, not all of them, but probably maybe 25 of the 30 odd, I was able to visit Christadelphians.
Mhm.
So in 1967, for instance, I went to Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Venezuela, Colombia, and Panama and home, which was about a 3 or 4 week trip. So Muriel had written ahead to brethren and sisters on Trinidad and Tobago, which I met, and we had memorial services there. I went to Guyana and met Christadelphians there, some of whom have since moved to Toronto, and I know them here right now. I visited Bogota, Colombia, with on my own, of course, but there was a brother George Smith who was there, and Bill and Carol Rawson from England who were learning Spanish. They had just got to Colombia. So my association over the years, mostly through Bible schools and my fortunate travel experiences, was that I was able to visit Christadelphians in Norway, Germany, all over the UK and Scotland and Fiji and New Zealand, Australia, and a very, very fortunate experience for me because I still have those contacts today, and I'm 96 years old in a couple of months. So they have been of immeasurable value to me over the years.
I think that is one of the things that is very unique about the Christadelphians is that although we are small in number in terms of the number of worldwide members that there might be or in North America, you can go anywhere in the world and meet a fellow Christadelphian, meet someone in their ecclesia, and share in the fellowship that you have. And it's as if you've known each other for many years. And I think that's certainly,
It sounds like you've experienced that.
yeah,
And,
I have as well.
Yeah. Well, I obviously have experienced it in spades because if you get into an ecclesia, let's say in Germany or someplace, and they usually take you back to their home, you get to know them, you have that affinity right to start with in the ecclesia, and I have many, many memories and good stories to tell about those associations that have benefited me over the years.
Mm-hmm. So, as you have gotten a little older and as life maybe has changed, how would you say your own personal relationship has changed with God as you've gotten older? There obviously can be struggles that have happened in life and there are different life circumstances, but how would you say that your own personal faith and own personal journey in your relationship with God and what that means to you has changed?
I go back again to the times that I've been able to spend with brethren and sisters in other places, the firm development of acquaintance, Christadelphian acquaintance here in North America, particularly, and obviously where we live. And we developed 3 or 4, maybe more, very, very close relationships with people, brothers and sisters of our age, who were either bringing up families as we were, and who were strong spiritually, and that association over the years was probably, and for me, from a worldwide standpoint, were the things that really, really held me together and increased my faith. I used to, when I was in some foreign country, and I may have been experiencing some testing of some kind, I used to visualize, and I've forgotten about this, but I used to visualize when I was the recording brother of our ecclesia for 15 years or so, but I used to think when I was away and subject to some temptation, I would visualize the brethren and sisters in our ecclesia that I would look down upon if I were presiding. And I would think about if I messed up, what kind of an example was I going to be to those brethren and sisters who sort of relied on me to remain strong in what I believe, you know. So you need to develop a really close acquaintance and fellowship and sharing of time. And we were able to do that, again, at Bible schools and other activities, gatherings in our home most of the time. In fact, we made a few trips to ski in Quebec in the eastern townships. And we came home a couple of weekends, and I driving down the street, and all the lights in our house were on. And I thought, wow, what's going on? And it turns out that this brother and sister that we were very, very close to had come down, and they were in our house preparing meals for us to come home to.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a wow. You know, that's another eureka moment. And we had visits from brothers and sisters who were from other countries, for instance, South America and so on, who would come and stay with us in Toronto, and also brothers and sisters from the UK and elsewhere, who we became very, very close to and used to visit back and forth when we went on, sometimes on holidays or I was on business. And so that was the development that cemented my personal faith, because I had gone through high school and university with 2 or 3 Christadelphians that I didn't even know were Christadelphians at that time. That was when I was younger and hadn't been baptized. So we became very, very close friends.
You mentioned a little while ago about your family spirituality. Do you want to expand on that? So obviously you grew a family and passed some of this down, your knowledge, your upbringing, how you wanted to raise a family. So talk a little bit about how not just you and your wife's life had changed from becoming exposed to Christadelphian, but how then that extended to your extended family that you now have as well.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, because obviously, from a family standpoint, you want your children hopefully to understand the Bible, understand what life is all about, understand what kind of relationships need to be developed. And so we had twins and moved to Toronto with 3 children, twins and another baby at the time, in the late 50s, early 60s. So since they obviously attended Sunday school and the Ecclesia and Bible schools and so on over the years, and they've all been baptized. They've all come to an understanding of what the Bible's all about and how it's hopefully going to be meaningful enough in their lives to propel them along. And we've had 10 grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren. Most of our grandchildren, except for 3 or 4, are not baptized, but most of them are baptized. So they've come to an understanding, and of course that's nice to see over the years, to see that develop, and reinforces my own faith and hope that I have, both for myself and for them.
You know, when I think about some of the older brothers and sisters that I grew up with, they made a positive impact on my life, and my own grandparents doing the same thing. If you could think of one message that you would want to pass on to the next generation of believers, whether this be your family or anyone who's listening to our message today, what is one really important message you would want to pass on to them about how to live a life of faith?
I guess the biggest thing that influenced me was the relationships which we developed with families, younger families, roughly our age or whatever. And that is a big part of your growing up, because you have children and everything's brand new to you and me, and so the fact that you develop those strong spiritual relationships, and you can go aside in your own home and talk about absolutely anything you want to talk about from a scriptural standpoint and from an everyday position with your families and your children, because you're all going through the same problems. But the other thing for me was, again, I have to go back to Bible school because we developed relationships with brothers and sisters in other countries, as I said earlier, that have stand the test of time, and that has cemented my faith and ensured that I'm hopefully going to remain strong in what I believe and how I conduct myself. So that's a big influence. If you have to develop the right connections, the right spiritual approach to having very close friends who believe as you do. That's probably the biggest factor for me.
I think that is a very powerful message, and it really goes back to being able to the positive reinforcement that can happen of faith or any habit. If you have other people who are equally motivated as you to be motivated to develop a goal, to better themselves, to increase your faith, it's so much easier to do it with a group as opposed to doing it on your own. When you're if you're on a deserted island and you don't really have that influence around you, it becomes really hard. And that's the power, I think, of an ecclesia. And when you also have people, as you said, like around your same age, that if you all have like young families around you, it's a natural thing to develop and have those close bonds with each other.
Yeah, we've been fortunate enough to have in our country we call it a cottage, which for us is a summer home, about 120 miles from Toronto, and we've had been fortunate enough to have others come and stay with us for 2 or 3 weeks at the lake and develop. We always have a Sunday morning service at the lake, a remembrance service. We have sometimes at our cottage we've had up to 40 people there on a Sunday morning sitting outside, and we have a memorial service. And then you develop that strength of the spiritual strength over time that remains steadfast, helps you to remain steadfast in what you believe and how you're going to conduct yourself. And not only that, it's who you're going to be with. It's a relationship. I guess some people find it and some don't, but I found it that once you establish yourself as sort of oriented to the Bible, you are able to handle situations that are not close to your spiritual life, because you have to take a stand at some point that you're either going to be involved with somebody else or you're going to go the way that the scriptures tell you what to do and how to do it. So it's a two-pronged kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, Russell, I want to thank you for I think if anyone knows you and the positive influence that you've obviously had on others around you and your own personal family, but I also want to thank you for your time today to spend some time with me chatting about your life and your life experience in the truth. And hopefully this has also been a good positive message to anyone who's listening in today, that they can be motivated to continue to develop their own personal faith, whatever that looks like for them in the many different areas of their life span that they may have. And so I want to thank you for that time today.
Oh, thank you for doing it. I didn't know what to expect, but I hope it's helpful to others as well. It's a really good work that you're doing.